Alright guys, and here it is, the Akatsuki Gundam Oowashi Unit. I can't tell you, this was a very interesting build, but I want to go ahead and go over what I found good, what I found bad, and really deep dive into, is this kit as bad as everybody says it is? So let's go ahead and dig in. Okay, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back whenever. I just finished this build. I know that this is a very controversial build, but I had to get it. I had to build it for myself. I had to see what it was about. And I've got some stuff to say about this kit. But first and foremost, I do want to go over what we're doing here with this new video. So this video is going to be a first for a lot of different reasons. As you can tell, I'm going to be putting up two different perspectives as opposed to what I was doing before. And so we're going to have a camera right here, and we're going to have a camera right there. And we're going to be doing a picture-in-picture thing most likely. And I hope this works out the way that I envisioned it in my mind. So, without getting too far into the weeds, let's go ahead and really do a deep dive into this kit. Because, man, I really have a lot to say about this thing. So I'm sorry if this is longer than normal, but it very well may be. So, as with most cases, we want to start with the good and the bad, but I think what we're going to do here is we're going to do the opposite of that. We're going to start with the bad, then we're going to focus on the neutral, then we're going to go to the positives, and then we're going to go finally do some things that I've taken note of and if I recommend the kit. So let's go in that order. So the cons first. This kit, as you can tell, is nice and gold and pretty and has all the flashiness that you could imagine you would ever want out of a kit, or in this case, not want out of a kit. However, that does come with a caveat. Undergating. It is not, I repeat, fully done in a lot of areas on this kit. More prevalent here in some of the Oowashi unit. In the legs, let's take it off the base so we can make better use of the camera angles here. And let's go ahead and, you know what, for this case, we'll take the Oowashi unit off because it would help, I believe. Okay, so the undergating, to get back to that, is that it's not consistent across the kit, right? So here in the legs especially, you'll see, if you can see that closely, the undergating wasn't done very well, and so you're going to have these bare, non-gold plated parts or bits, especially here in the legs and where these shin guards are. You're going to see a lot of that, and that's unfortunate because this kit built up really well, and I think if there's a little bit more attention paid to the mold of this kit, the undergating would have been a lot better, more consistent, more precise, and you wouldn't have these unflashy looking spots after you cut them off. And of course, you know, I didn't do any sanding because if you did, you would have ruined it. But I used this and this only. This is what I used. I didn't do any sanding of the kit, and I wouldn't recommend doing it at all, even on the colored parts, because these are metallic flaked, or so it seems they're metallic flaked. And when I tried it, it scratched the ever-living bejesus out of it, so don't do it. Okay, and on one of these sides, I'm going to have another picture-in-picture demonstrating some of the flexibility and the articulation of these kits. So pay attention as I go through this because I have this in order, so you'll be able to see some of the kits articulation points as I'm going through it. All right, so this thing is packed full of detail, right? This thing is tons of detail in it. However, you'll never know it because all the flashiness, it takes away from that. It ultimately takes away from the detail that you can pull out of this kit. Now, if you want to do like some that I've seen and strip all the metallic plating off, be my guest, repaint it, recolor it, get all the detail out. But because it's gold, because it's plated, there's very little that you can actually do to panel line for it to stand out. And if you do try to panel line it, I really don't think it's going to be of any benefit to you. and you're not going to get what you want out of it. I really don't think so. And again, I'd just like to point out that because of how shiny it is, because of how gold it is, you really just lose out on how much detail this kit really has. And as you're building it out, you can see, like here in the bare plastic, if you can see in here, like here in just bare plastic, tons of detail. In the Oowashi unit, when you're putting this thing together, there's tons of detail inside of this thing that otherwise you wouldn't see because of all this gold. Sure, you could probably get some in here and do some work here inside the fins or the vents and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, is it really worth it? Because most of it's going to be covered up by the Gundam anyway. So, number 3, and this is the one that most people have the problem with. Even after posing this a little bit, just a little bit, the legs were loose. They were. I tried standing it up on its own without the Oowashi unit. I tried it with it. Of course, that wasn't going to work. But on its own, with just the beam saber and the shield, it didn't stand very well. It actually flopped a lot. And even with a strong pose that you would normally do with these, the legs started to kind of slowly inch their way away from each other, and it would just fall over. So I can confirm that this is very much a problem here in the legs, which is sad because they build up so well. They feel super sturdy when you're building it, but it's not the leg part so much. It's right in here at the joint. This joint is the actual problem. So I think if you can stiffen that up, do some work with some nail polish or some matte finish or a little bit of paint or whatever, you'd be able to stiffen that up, and you won't have that problem here at the joint in the leg. So 4th, this is a pro and a con, but it's more so a con in this case because it has the same shoulder joints as the real grade tall geese. And if anybody has built that kit, I think it was number 35. And for anybody who has built that kit, hold on, I gotta get a drink. Okay. So for anybody who has built that kit for the 3rd time, you will know that here in the shoulders, and you know what, we'll just take this off because that wasn't a pain to put back on. I'll get into that in a minute. The shoulders build up, they build up fine. It's the fact that whenever you build them, it's so tight in here, the tolerance is so tight that if you did mess up for some reason, you would end up breaking the peg that these things fit into and ultimately having to replace it. And it would suck because I had to go to Plamo Kit Bash to order a new piece. And not for this one, but for the real grade tall geese, when I did that, it was $4 for 2 little pieces and then $4 shipping. So $9 to replace 2 small parts. So be careful when you do replace this or when you do put this together, because if you do need to replace it, there's no guarantee Plamo Kit Bash has it in order or in stock. So you'll probably have to go and buy a new kit overall. And to buy this kit, to replace a single part for this kit, you'll be spending, again, the $88 it takes to buy this kit. Thankfully, I got this one. It was on 25% off, so I got it for like $67. But for an $88 kit, that's a lot to screw up and to pay for just to replace that little piece. So be careful. Number 4, again, the movements here. The arms aren't so bad. I thought they were as I was building it, so I put that as a con. But what I will say, it will get loose over time. That is the nature of the beast with this particular kit. I think it has a lot to do with the frame, that advanced mobile suit frame that you saw. It is a step backwards. You know, I've built quite a few real grades, and this one by far has got to be like the second most irritating, next to the RX 782 1.0. Now that could change because I haven't built the Strike Freedom or the Justice yet, but what I can say is from the ones I have personally built, this one is the second most irritating because it will get loose. Now, everything fit together pretty well, but it will get loose and it will. So I would not recommend touching this thing for more than a couple of times to get the poses you want and just leave it alone. Absolutely leave it alone. 6th con, and you saw this right here. And typically, um, as I was putting this together, I didn't think much about it, but this little piece right here, you can probably see it in both angles, both cameras. This little piece right here for the wrist or the wrist guard, that sits in ever so easily. It has slots, right? It's not pegged in, it's slotted in. So when you put it on there, and then you put the shield on, you've got to put the shield on right here with this little peg. This tiny, here you can't see it with my finger in the way. This tiny little peg fits in this little hole, and then you have to use the right hand. The right hand, not the right hand, but the appropriate hand, should I say, to hold this in place. However, even with that not there, this will fall out when you try to manipulate the shield to work the way you want to. So this will always come off. So my recommendation would be to get some rubber cement, some glue or whatever, and glue the crap out of this so it stays. You're not going to affect anything here in the wrist itself, because when you take this off, you see the joints right here and now right here. So if you put some glue here and put this back on, it should stick and you won't have to worry about that anymore. But the fact that you have to glue a piece down tells you that there was not a lot of thought process in this and how this was designed. So this was a very, very poor design. And I think Bandai should take some lessons from this kit right here. Being number 41, this should be the best kit that they've ever produced, and it's not. Number 7, and if the camera hasn't shown it yet or if you haven't picked it up yet, this thing is an absolute monstrosity when it comes to fingerprints. It is a fingerprint magnet. It loves fingerprints. So when handling it, if you got white gloves, I got big hands, so for me, gloves are hard to find. But if you got some white gloves or some black gloves that are whatever, so you can handle this thing, wear those, because otherwise you're going to be cleaning this thing a lot if you plan on handling it a lot and reposing it and whatever, right? So this thing is a fingerprint magnet. Not typically a con, but for me, it is, because I can look at this thing and go, oh my God, that's irritating. Because fingerprints, as you know, the oils in your skin will start eating away at certain materials, and I think that could very well be the case here. So I wouldn't even go as far as to say as gloss coating this thing. I would just try to rub it down as much as you can with the cloth, and hopefully you get all the fingerprints off. So that's that. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the neutral points before we get into the positive. So neutral points. I wanted to speak on the waist unit as much as I could, but truth be told, there's not a lot here to speak on. It builds up just like any other real grade waist unit does. So there's not a whole lot to say here. It's very neutral in my review of it. Secondly, it's a good looking kit. I mean, despite its pitfalls and despite its issues, it's a solid looking kit. It really is. If you look at this thing in person, and the camera is not going to do it justice, it really won't, because you know how shiny it is, all the light reflections and refractions off of it, you won't be able to tell. But in person, this is a really pretty kit. So much so that it caught my wife's attention, and she, you know, sometimes could care less about this hobby, but she really liked this one. She loves the way this thing looks. I didn't even bother putting stickers on it because you wouldn't really be able to tell they're on there anyway. So I just didn't. Number 3 is the Oowashi unit. This right here. If I'm butchering this name, you know, it is what it is. Yeah, at this point, I'm already this far in. This thing, this is a neutral point for me, because it's a neutral and a positive. So it's basically like the real grade Impulse Force Spec 2 or Force Impulse Spec 2. It doesn't build the same way, right? But it's reminiscent of that kit. It has a lot of the same features of that kit, but it also has, you know, some features of the Strike Freedom, these blasters or these cannons on the side. So it's, you know, it's a backpack that looks a lot like the Force Impulse Spec 2 and part of the Strike Freedom. But it's a neutral point. There's not a lot here to say that's positive or negative about it, because it builds up quite nicely. It's easy to use. It doesn't fall apart. I mean, it's solid. And so, I mean, you can put it as a pro if you want. I put it as a neutral. The other thing, the last neutral point, is this thing right here, this stand. It comes with this stand. So I expect if you're paying $88 for a real grade, you're going to get a stand, and so you do. However, I got a theory on this. I think Bandai knew that this kit was going to be a problem, and so they made sure that it came with a stand because they knew that you would have to put this on a stand. So if that wasn't the thought, then okay. But if it was a thought, good for you, Bandai, because that's some forethought that you probably shouldn't have had to do, but you did anyway. And some better design elements should have gone into the kit to avoid having to use this as a backup to hold the kit up. So again, a neutral point. So some positives, because there's a lot of negatives there, and even neutral points can be taken negatively. So let's look at some positives here. This kit, it does build up quite nicely. It builds up very nicely. I've struggled sometimes with wanting to build the legs of some of these kits, but this one, surprisingly, builds up quite nice. And as you can tell in the video, if it's playing on this side or whatever side we're looking at, I'll demonstrate the articulation here because it does build up quite nicely. It does look good. It's easy to put together. There was not a whole lot that I had to complain about with building this kit. The plates separate as they need to whenever you actually move the legs, much like every other real grade, but it does it pretty well. It's just too bad that the con is that these legs are loose. Again, the shoulder joint, this was a pro and a con, but the pro here is that there is a lessons learned, I believe, because it's not as stiff and it is easier to manipulate. There are tight tolerances, as I said, but it's not as stiff. So that could be a good and a bad thing in most cases. I'm going to go with the positive side of this. I'm hoping it's a good thing. But it is a lot like the real grade Tallgeese kit. But again, I think there's a lessons learned moment here because when you take the arm off, and I guess I could demonstrate it. Yeah, I'll go ahead. Forgive me. Anyway, when you take the arm off and you pull this out, I like the way this comes out, but again, like I said, it's tight tolerances, so be careful. Let's get this out all the way if I can. There's a little piece right here that's a double slotted thing for pegs that the real grade Tallgeese has too. And the problem that had is it was, I'm going to use the word proprietary, but it was slotted for certain pieces. That presented a problem in and of itself because what happened was if you put the wrong peg in the wrong hole, it would be super tight and trying to get it out to fit correctly or to rebuild, you would most likely rip off one of the pegs and you have to order a piece. That's what happened with me on the real grade Tallgeese. I had to order a new part here in the shoulder for the real grade Tallgeese because of that issue. But it looks like there's a lessons learned here, and they didn't have that problem with this one. So kudos to Bandai. I think they changed that and made a difference. It really did. And again, I want to go and point out that it does seem like they made an effort to eliminate fitment issues because this whole joint is built out a lot better than it was on the real grade Tallgeese. So that is a positive. That is a pro in my book. So number 4 is that the arms themselves have a ton of articulation because of the way that this thing builds up and is set up. It is designed to have a ton of articulation. It can move in any which direction that you want it to. The arms are jointed. This can spin. This is jointed pretty well. The hand, of course, can spin. So you're going to be able to get a lot of movement here in this kit on the arms. So Bandai did a wonderful job there. Absolutely wonderful. Get another drink again. And moving on, the head unit. I like how as I'm doing this, the poses get a little bit more fancier, accidentally fancier. It's he's reaching up for the skies. Anyway, the head unit was actually quite simple to build, surprisingly simple to build. It did come with this. With this addendum. As you can see, it came with this to tell you to this is incorrect, this is correct. However, I kind of ignored that as I was building it, and I put it together. It seems like I got it right, so good for me. But what's cool about this head unit is that it has a ton of articulation at the neck joint, and I think that's even the next point. Yep, that's the next point. So we'll go right into that. There's a lot of articulation here. So the head has a lot of movement backwards, forward, up and down, even like this. If you wanted to, I'm demonstrating it here. I know I've got probably a picture somewhere demonstrating it too, but it's just, I've never built a kit that has that level of articulation in the neck joint and the head. So it's kind of cool, and I like it a lot. So I'm re-demonstrating it. And number 7, as I pointed out, this thing is a pro. It does build up quite nicely. The Oowashi unit builds up real nice. Again, it is a mix of the Impulse Force Spec 2 and the Strike Freedom with its features. Just because of the way it looks. If you were to compare the two kits, the Strike Freedom and the Force Impulse Spec 2, you'd see a lot of the same features in those two kits in this unit. So, but it's a good looking unit. It built up pretty well. It's real solid. I had no problems with this. I think it's actually quite nice. I think Bandai actually did a really good job with this. I didn't build the jet unit out, like the fuselage for the cockpit, but whatever, because I knew it was going to go in the back of the kit. All right, so here we are at some other things of note, and I want to scroll down so I can read it. It's really just one thing, and it may seem stupid, but if you could look here at the beam sabers, I like this. I really do, because it reminds me of a lightsaber from Star Wars, with the color separation with the gold and the black, and then of course the beam. It reminds me of a lightsaber from Star Wars, and so that was one thing of note that I just wanted to go and put out there because I thought it was interesting. I know it's a nerdy thing, but it's whatever. I like it. I thought it was cool, so it's something to note. Anyway, so moving on. At the end of this whole thing, this whole video, the question must be there to ask, is it worth getting this kit? You know, for what you spend on this thing and what it can do and what it clearly can't do very well, I don't think it's worth getting. Just the issues with it alone, it's too much. You can get a much better kit for half the cost and be a lot happier with its overall build. I really do think that if you wanted to build something similar to this, the real grade Impulse Force Spec 2 would be the kit to buy over this kit. You're going to be spending about $37 for that one versus the 80 plus it is for this one. I really think that kit really is superior in a lot of ways versus this one. And I really think that you would be doing yourself a disservice to purchase this kit and to build it only for it to give you a lot of the same issues you saw with the early real grades. And that's just sad to me. And I hate to say that because it is a beautiful looking piece of kit. However, the caveat to this is the other side of this is, if you want to experience this kit yourself, then I would suggest buying it. And I would suggest everybody to at least find, this kit and buy it if you want to experience building it yourself, to kind of validate and verify the things that I've said here and others have said. Of course, I don't think I was as critical as a lot of others, but I do think that I would agree with a majority of them that this kit is just not worth buying, and you'd be better off buying something like the Impulse Force Spec 2 and building that for $37 versus what this one costs. So, all that being said, I do appreciate those who have subscribed to the channel, who have been part of this from day one, who are constantly helping out and commenting or liking and watching even the 2 live videos that I've done. It does help. It is encouraging. I like to see it. At the end of this, though, you know, I would ask that you subscribe and like the channel, because I am really trying to provide more videos much like this, and I will get this formula down. I will get this perfected to some degree. I will make it a lot easier to digest these videos. I know they are long. I know they can get long-winded, but I just have a lot to say most of the time, and I think I'd be doing y'all a disservice if I didn't get into that kind of detail with these kits that others just don't. So I feel that I've given you all the information I can about this, and it's up to you if you're going to go get it or not, but I would not recommend it. Again, go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. If you liked the video, go ahead and comment and go ahead and give it a like. If you didn't like the video, go ahead and leave a comment anyway and tell me why you didn't. I know it takes all kinds. So anyway, I'm done. This video is finished. I'll let y'all go, and keep on building, guys.